pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's very nice to see such a full house. It's been a long time since we've had standing room only, as I can see there in the back. So clearly, there's good cause, which is the recognition of some amazing achievements this year by our students and the parents that support them. So we're going to begin tonight with the recognition of our middle school students who competed in the UB the Chemist Challenge. And I believe that David is going to kind of put some color around this. And we have some wonderful parchment paper here for our winners. David, please.
Thank you very much. Thanks to the board. Thanks everybody for coming out tonight. This is our second year as a middle school participating in the BASF UB the Chemist Challenge. It actually started for us last year when the BASF actually came to us and said, look, we've got this great opportunity. We would love to get a local school involved. And so we began last year, and our students took part, and we had a number of students who achieved a great deal of success. Essentially what it is it starts with a written qualifying exam that students take in school. From that, the school's top performers go on to compete at the Westchester County level, and then the winners of the county level move on to the state and then potentially beyond. So this year we had 6 students who went on from Irvington Middle School to compete at the county level. Of those students, 5 of them actually made it to the state level, and we actually had 2 students finish right near the top. Really an incredibly compelling level of work went into this for them. Students prepared on their own time. This is, chemistry is something that's taught at the high school level. So chemistry at the middle school level is kind of beyond where kids are normally doing their work in science classes. So students did a lot of work outside of school, a lot of studying on their own, showed a lot of commitment, and really had this incredible level of success. So I want to congratulate all of our students, the 6 who moved on to the first level, Rishi Matabushi, Rashit Gupta, Henry Demarest, 6th grader, Ayushi Jha, Zach Rosman, and Julia Sabatino. They were our 6 students who moved on initially. From that group, 5 moved forward, as I said, to the state level. And I see 2 of them here tonight. I don't think I see any others, although maybe I can. Zach Rosman, one of our 7th graders, was one of the students who moved on to the state competition.
Martini, are you still alive back there? So I have to expect him to come out with his hair.
Mr. Sotown, maybe the students that are in attendance, we could call them forward, be congratulated by the board.
Sure, yeah, that'd be fine. But just before I finish, I do want to say that I think I just saw Ayushi Jha also making it to the state level. Henry Demarest, one of our 6th grade students, not only made it to the state round, but finished 2nd in the entire state of New York in the YBTC competition. Really, for all of these students, just a great accomplishment. So if we could, at this time, maybe we could call up Ayushi. Zachary Rosman.
Congratulations, Zachary.
Thanks, Zach, my man.
And Henry Demarest. David Gupta has joined us. I'll give that to you, but please welcome to the board.
You gotta come up and
Yeah.
Congratulations, we're glad you made it.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Good job, man.
Good job.
Any other surprise people coming? Okay, good. All right. So for our student athletes that we're about to recognize now, Chris, Dr. Harrison, and I are going to do the honors because Artie couldn't be with us tonight. Artie normally officiates these. But Dr. Harrison, please take over. And
Yes, certainly. And apologies from Mr. McCormick. He had an unexpected family situation tonight that took him away. But he and I collaborated on a couple notes this evening. But first, I'd like to acknowledge our wrestlers. So if we could have our wrestling coaches come up to the front, Brian Bernaducci and certainly want to acknowledge the great work of our coaching staff and supporting our wrestlers this year, and a program that's really growing and taking off, and a lot of that responsibility not only sits with the talent and enthusiasm of our students, but also with the great leadership from our staff. Tonight we're going to acknowledge and recognize two students, one being Peter Jones and the other Adam Krieger. Peter Jones, Peter, you had a 22-10 record this year and a career record of 96-67. That's a lot of matches, man. That you won the Irvington and Ardsley tournaments. Sectional champ 2015, third place in sectionals in 13 and 14, and this year, of course, being the sectional champion and competed in the state championships. And then Adam Krieger had an outstanding record of 35-5 this season, career record of 88-35, won the Irvington, Ardsley, and Edgemont tournaments, placed second in the section in 2014, and then, of course, the champion this year, and then competed in the state championships. So amazing, guys. What a career, great performance this year. So before we call Peter and Adam up, Coach, you want to take a minute and say a few words about their accomplishments?
Yeah, Peter and Adam, they were amazing to coach this season. You know, wrestling, we probably don't get as much publicity or notice as some of the other teams, kind of being a lesser known sport, but these two young men as athletes, they were unbelievable. They competed every time out. Peter and Adam wrestled against some of the best competition in New York State. It was the first time in actually Irvington wrestling history that we had two section champs, which is an amazing deal, and they both got to go up to Albany and compete in the state tournament, which is an honor, because if you go up to the state tournament, we're talking guys that are wrestling at the highest Division I levels, and these guys competed with some of the best wrestlers in New York and in the United States, so it was awesome. And as young men, these two, I got to coach them. This was my third year coaching them, and it's a pleasure. They were both extensions of me as a coach. You know, I could rely on them for leadership. They set a great example for everyone. We practice with our modified team, and so we have 7th and 8th graders practice with us, and these kids would put their arm around those kids and be great leaders and great role models for them. So as much as they're great wrestlers, they're also great people, and it was an honor to coach them both. So
Great,
thank you.
great, thank you.
here, we're sharing this one.
Yeah, okay. So, guys, why don't you come on up? So, Peter, Adam, come on down. So, you know, you can't think of a better night when you get to sit back and celebrate the academic accomplishments of students and then look at the talents in competition in athletics as well. It really represents how our students are succeeding in so many different levels. So we go from celebrating our champion wrestlers to acknowledging our champion basketball players. So if I could ask, I'm trying to see which coaches are in the audience. Coach Marr, you're here, right? So come on up front. Barbara, come on up. And Tara here? No, and Mike's not here. So another outstanding year, outstanding coaching staff. If my notes are correct, 23-2 this year, which is amazing. Won the Warnock tournament in impressive style. Also won the Autism Classic over AA Carmel School. League champions for the 8th straight year. Won the sectional and regional title for the 5th time in the last 6 years. In winning the sectional, there were a number of thrilling wins, we may say, along the way. We could highlight the individual accomplishments of so many of the girls on the team that really, really just stood out. But we can also look to a couple of our seniors that Laura, Catherine, Havana, and Roxy were looking at 4-year varsity players and had a career record of 93-8, I believe is what we came up with. So quite amazing to think of that. So I would like to allow Coach Constantine and Coach Marr to say a few words about our outstanding athletes before bringing them up for recognition.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Board, for doing this tonight. I also would like to mention Olivia Rose, who was also a senior, who played with us for 3 years, and is certainly a huge part of the seniors that played 4 years. They're an unbelievable group of girls. Nobody thought that we were going to do what we did this year. Everybody thought that Ardsley was going to win everything, and I think we showed them twice. But most of all, these girls play really, really hard. And what Coach said about the wrestlers and how they practice with the modified. We practice with our JV girls, and our modified girls will come up sometimes, and it's become family. And these girls have been part of a family for a long, long time. And I think that that's the most important thing that they get out of this is they're playing together, which is sort of our theme and our mantra, and learning how to help each other and not picking on each other and always boosting each other up. They play with incredible heart. I've coached a long, long time, and I've never had a team that has played harder or been more unified than the team this year. And a lot of that has to do with my assistant coach, Barbara Constantine, who is a volunteer. She doesn't get paid a penny. She comes all the time. She has 3 children, so she's a busy, busy life. But she really has given these girls a spirit and a feeling about what hard work can do. And when you work hard, good things happen. And I can't thank these girls enough, and thank you very, very much for all your support.
Great. So what we would like to do, I'd also like to acknowledge Principal Cohen, who came in to support the kids. So welcome, Dave. So what we'd like to do, we'll call our girl basketball players up one at a time to come up, be recognized just as the others were tonight. So you get your moment on camera as well. So,
all right. So I'm going to stand because it's easier. Laura DeCampley. Havana Hall. Catherine Hoy. Olivia Rose. Roxy Trauma. Lindsay Shafazada. Nina Valdez. Lindsay Halpin. Katie McMahon. Oh, really? Oh, okay. I know what that feels like. Kelly Degnan. Joey Maxwell. And Mary Brereton. And Heather Hall. That was a nice pick, Mary. You sat right there. Olivia Valdez. All right.
Well, certainly yeah, we'll pass them all over, yeah. Oh, we got
I'm
them
going to give her Olivia's.
Oh.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Yeah, of course.
Great.
And I think we should also say that tonight, Gina, you're also on our agenda because you donated your $500 award from the Sunnyside Bank because you're Person of the Year. Yeah, but
Yeah.
You're here now, and we'll get to it later. But while you're here, we can say thank you for that. That was really My only question is, does Person of the Year mean you're going to be on Time Magazine soon?
Yeah.
I can work on that for you.
So just a few words, and Coach Marr doesn't like to be the center of attention. But with this recognition and all the great work that Sunnyside is really doing in our community, they were looking to donate $500 to a charity of her choosing. And just like she is on the basketball court, she fought and wanted the money to come back to the school and turn around, and the money's being donated to programs in the Irvington schools rather than taking the money outside our community. So congratulations and kudos to you.
Okay, well, that concludes our award season here. So we're going to get to some boring stuff, which is the appointment of our clerk pro tem.
Kids are not staying for this?
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. The appointment of the clerk board.
Look at that, Bev, you cleared the room.
I know. There's an odd effect on people.
Yeah, it was quick. I didn't realize that we had to dress up for this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, it doesn't matter.
All right, can I have a motion to accept the resolution of appointing Bev Miller as our clerk pro tem for this evening?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Bob moved, and Maria seconded. And we have our acceptance of our agenda. Can I have a resolution for our agenda this evening?
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Did you say yes? Yeah, I didn't hear you. So did you get that, Bev? Yep. Bob, Maria? All right, so we move on to our superintendent's report from Dr. Harrison, as always.
All right. Good evening again. A few items that I think are important to touch on tonight. And, a hot topic in education across the state has been the Education Transformation Act. And I wanted to provide a little bit of an update. Going back about a week ago, we shared a petition that was developed locally and launched both in Westchester and in Long Island, calling on our legislators to slow down this process, to pause the implementation of the act, and in doing so, to bring together a collective group of experts that could develop a system that would certainly be more beneficial in not only measuring student growth, but also to evaluate our teachers. It's pretty exciting to see that when I checked this afternoon that the petition has earned over 20,000 signatures thus far. And certainly we're looking at a matter of days left in this legislative session. I would encourage anybody in the community that has strong opinion on this to continue to advocate for the cause and speak your mind on the matter. Probably the most effective way of looking for some shifts here in the proposed legislation would be to reach out to our legislators, because it truly appears that the State Education Department has their hands tied by the law in itself. So they are in a position whereby they must deliver on what the legislators passed and what the governor really has ordered. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to attend a meeting with about 100 others from the Hudson Valley, we'd say, to meet with Deputy Commissioner Ken Wagner. It was via a video conference. Ken spoke for about 30 minutes and was foreshadowing, I believe, some of the revisions in SED's proposal that will be presented to the Board of Regents at their meeting Monday and Tuesday. It's expected that they'll present on Monday, and it's expected also that what they're putting forth is going to be reflected in the regulations that the Board of Regents is expected to adopt by June 30th. A lot of the details that Ken spoke of were a lot of nuts and bolts, talking about some shifts in their thinking around teacher cut scores, to think where the different levels where teachers would fall in the different rating categories, and providing some local flexibility. They also talked about optional growth measures that districts could possibly employ, which gets a little concerning, because right now they're in a position, if we're thinking about, say, performance assessments, for example, the requirements that SED would put forth, they would be that we'd have to almost purchase additional tests from a test manufacturer such as another Pearson. That if school districts have the desire to develop or have other locally developed measures, those could be potentially considered and approved by SED. However, SED has not outlined the actual process and mechanism for that approval, which is really worrisome. They've also looked at, they're going to provide some flexibility in and around the observation weights for teachers and principals. Herein, you may recall discussion around independent evaluators or outside evaluators, so someone outside of school, say, so we could, for example, we could have Mr. Sotile come over and observe some faculty in the high school, and Mr. Cohen head to the middle school. So there's going to be some flexibility in the weight that actual outside observation would hold. They also prescribed, which seems really odd and nothing in line with our practice, minimum standards for the length of an observation. So in the original proposal that SED put forth to the Board of Regents, they were actually setting standards for a minimum amount of time that an observer, so picture me as a principal going into a classroom to observe a teacher's work. If it was a probationary teacher or an ineffective or developing tenured teacher, that I would only have to observe that person for 20 minutes. And if it was a tenured person, that it would only have to be for 10 minutes. Clearly not best practice, clearly not what we would believe in and administer here in Irvington. But I believe it sounds like they're going to take those minimums off the recommendations. It just really sounds like it's really some bad PR in and around teacher observation if we're looking to increase accountability for everybody in our schools to think you're only going to be observed for 10 or 20 minutes. Then there's some other items that they're looking to address as far as statistical anomalies that are occurring. But two things that really stand out to me that I wanted to bring to the board and public's attention, that there's going to be a requirement that's going to be related to corrective action plans that SED will look to implement. So if we picture the conversation that's been happening across the state, and we think about the critique that has come in from the governor and many others about our current existing APPR system that is already faulty, that really there isn't that bell curve that some people want to see, that really the number of teachers, the majority of teachers are skewed towards the end of being effective and highly effective. So SED is indicating that if you look at a curve that's not more balanced, that if you have everybody skewed to one end of the scale or the other, that they may intervene, that they may have school districts develop corrective action plans, and where there are significant problems, the state may intervene. And when asked what that intervention may look like, They said they may provide some guidance in reworking local APPR plans or to provide training for observers in school districts. So that's a bit of a concern. And then the other issue, and something that is should be of grave concern to everybody in our schools, once again, is the rush to implement. The rush to implement. So when we think where we are, we're talking June 30th that the regulations would be approved by the Board of Regents, and then you have to think there's a required 45-day period after that. Right now, we're being told that there's a November 15th deadline for getting approval on your plans from SED, but also that there's a deadline that precedes that of September 1st when SED wants to start to have plans submitted to allow them time to approve them. So when we look at regulations being adopted June 30th, and then when we consider where we are in the school year and that ability to have those finite, specific details to be able to negotiate with our bargaining units, it's very difficult to do that in the summer when our teachers are not here. They are looking to introduce a hardship waiver. The hardship waiver would grant the opportunity for a district to postpone their submission for 2 months. But in that process, you have to be able to demonstrate good faith effort to negotiate. So I can tell you that the administration of your school district, as well as our largest bargaining unit, the IFA, are eager to try to get to the table. Dr. Core and I met with them this afternoon, and we share the commitment to getting this done, but at the same time wanting to develop a product that's going to be meaningful and certainly helps inform instruction and really reflect the quality of learning that is occurring in our schools. So we're waiting for that guidance that should come out next week that should foreshadow where the regulations are going to go for June 30th. And we're trying to establish a series of meetings, beginning with one before school gets out, and then trying to get a commitment to meet a few times throughout the summer. So the concern in not having this completed and not getting approval, of course, is the fact that any increases in state aid are on the line. So with that in mind, we're all dedicated and committed to getting this done. The final thing on the subject that I would like to just reference that also in attendance at this video conference was our new regent, Judith Johnson. And if anybody's seen Judith speak or read anything that she's written, she's really a breath of fresh air and the lens that she brings to the debate up in Albany. But it was interesting to watch her sit relatively silently throughout the entire video conference. And once they turned that switch off and Mr. Wagner disappeared, Judith stood up, took the mic, and really spoke about the concerns that she has with respect to the Transformation Act. She also spoke of a position paper that she and other regions have developed. This position paper is calling for a delay in the implementation of the act. It is also calling for a group of experts that come together and review what has been proposed and to recommend modifications. Judith's hard work right now, though, as she described, is to try to get majority support of the board. Right now, she believes she has 7 or 8 signatures on it, and she needs 9 to get the votes necessary next week. So she's working diligently. But then at the same time, she said if unsuccessful, she is really putting out there that statewide there should be an effort to try to take advantage of the opportunities to postpone submission of plans, take advantage of waivers that are out there, and I would suspect that depending on what happens the next week or two, that there will be some organized effort, whether it comes from maybe a minority opinion of the Board of Regents or from other professional groups that we certainly will share and discuss. But I think the important thing is that there's a lot of challenges before us, but everyone, the board and community, should be assured that the administration and our bargaining unions are going to do our diligence to make sure we make necessary progress on this. And you know, it's a piece of negotiation, so the details we won't be able to discuss openly at this point, but we hope that we'll be able to get it done. So a couple other items that I want to just speak to quickly, provide an update on our bond and capital projects. I don't know what happened up in Albany. Either they took out a paper shredder or they hired a whole bunch of people, but they've made a lot of improvement. And Beverly, who is sitting there making her projections all the time, is now thinking that there's a possibility that they could begin to look at our applications within the next few weeks. Still, there's questions and review that goes back and forth, and doesn't necessarily change our timeline, what we're looking towards next summer.
Because just like 2 weeks ago, it was 146, right?
Yeah, so now we're looking at a situation where we have how many before us?
About 40.
About 40 in front of us. Yeah, so a little mystery, but we'll take it if it works in our favor. So that's some good news to report. Also just wanted to give a shout out and thanks to CAB and I Ask, who sponsored the pre-prom red carpet event here at the campus on Thursday. It was a new event, but it was outstanding. If anyone was there and had the opportunity to see it, rather than kids arriving at the prom independently with parents driving them or with a couple couples coming together in cars, all of our students came together. Approximately 240 students came together here in the Mar Gym. There was a red carpet laid out for them. There was refreshments provided by the PTSA and CAB, of course. We had a big photo booth where kids could go in and get photos taken, and it was a great social experience. The kids seemed to have a lot of fun, but what was really exciting to see all the parents outside and everybody to really see the kids parading back and forth. It was a unique experience that I think was enjoyable by the adults and the kids alike. Students all boarded the buses and then headed over to the Westchester Manor. And if anyone's ever been over at the Westchester Manor when there's a big event going on, they can only drop off one car at a time. So in past years, it could take 45 minutes for all those kids to unload and check into the prom. We did all those details here. They got on the buses. Mr. Cohen and I went over there in advance, and when the buses pulled up, we stopped traffic, unloaded 2 buses at a time, and between 5 and 10 minutes, we had all the students inside having their refreshments before the prom. So you talk about maximizing the experience for kids. So when we brought this idea up a few months ago, a lot of credit certainly goes to Dave Cohen, Deb Marinello, and of course Carlene Julian. But it wouldn't have been possible without the support of CAB, I Ask, and PTSA. So we extend our great thank you to that and congratulate the high school team for their good work on that. And finally, the last thing that I just want to point out, again, end of the year. It's hard to believe we're here. We're looking at 2 weeks. So much going on. So just please stay tuned to your school newsletters, school calendars, whether it's moving up ceremonies, graduations, picnics, whatever the case may be. A ton of super events coming up. The one thing that I do want to point out, though, that's notable is that next week, 6:30 in the library, we're going to have our 10-year retirement reception where we honor our faculty that is earning tenure, and of course those that have had a long career in the district and will be moving on to the next phase in their career. So a lot happening in the next 2 weeks. Just please stay tuned into your children's schools to make sure you don't miss anything. Thank you.
Thank you. It's nice to hear that there are some reasonable points of view being expressed about the Education Transformation Act.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah, we're trying.
So we're on to our main business tonight. We have 2 sort of discussion items. The first is a discussion of our instructional coach position. This is a position that was approved in our most recent budget. The principal of the objective of this position is to kind of mirror what we're doing with the math coach and to focus really on ELA. This was Robin's suggestion during the budget process that ultimately the full board supported. And now tonight we want to discuss about what the capabilities of that person, the job description, and really it's an opportunity for the board to weigh in consultation with the administration about what we want this position really to focus on.
Yeah.
So you're going to
say a
kick
few
us
words
off
like that,
about
please.
what you've already thought about so far, and we can kind of react to it and give you some feedback.
So, I guess tonight's purpose is to help clarify what some of the board's objectives may be. Going back to the conversation during the budget process, it was clear there was interest and commitment in looking to bring some additional instructional support to our secondary schools with a lens towards English language arts. And in doing so, Robin, it was a great idea. Administration walked away from the table. Raina facilitated some conversations and collaborated with our secondary administrators and tried to think about how we could possibly make the most of this position. We started off referring to it as a secondary literacy coach, and when we think about literacy, we're talking about the teaching of writing, we're talking about the teaching of reading, and all the skills that fall in between the two. But as we move through our process, and Dr. Kaur, feel free to jump in, that it became apparent that we were looking a little deeper than just English language arts and literacy in itself, but also looking at the quality of instruction, looking at supporting our teachers and their delivery of curriculum. And in doing so, it was our acknowledgement that when we think about the teaching of literacy, and again, I'm using that deliberately as a big term for ELA, that we look at where our requirements are per standards, that a significant responsibility for teaching of reading, particular skills, particular content, and particular types of writing occurs across the curriculum, just not solely exclusively limited to an English classroom. So we developed, beginning to develop a job description that helps inform our selection process. And in doing so, we look to spell out what some of those responsibilities may be. And I think the conversation tonight is to help inform administration to make sure we're on the right track, for you to reinforce what your objectives were, to make sure we're looking for the right sort of people. We've begun to advertise, and I want to be upfront that we have not received a ton of applicants as of yet. So we certainly are eager to meet some qualified folks that have deep experiences in the instruction of English, instruction of writing and reading, but also people that have the capacity to be able to lead staff development, to be collaborators, to be coaches, have a deep knowledge of recent research as it pertains to student success and growth as readers and writers. Dr. Kaur, is there anything? No?
About how many teachers would we expect this person to be collaborating with directly? Because with Ms. Rosner, it's a relatively finite number of teachers. I mean, we can kind of count them all. And I'm just wondering if we've done the same, more or less, with this position.
Yeah, so with Christine Rosner, it's every grade level teacher, including as well as our math RTI teachers. So it's every teacher in the elementary school. So that's, doable to a degree. For this person, it would really be working with English, science, and social studies teachers. I guess one of the things I would just build on that Chris said is the Common Core literacy standards are, science and social studies have their own literacy standards. They are separate. The expectation from New York State is that a large percentage of reading and writing is done in the content areas. So English is responsible for a large chunk of the literature, but informational text is designed to go through science and social studies through the content area. Similarly at the elementary school, but it's one teacher. So they don't write them separately, but the expectation is that our students in elementary school are learning and experiencing informational text in science and social studies in their classrooms. When you get to the secondary level, they can't do it that way. So the expectation is that there are a set of standards for science and social studies. So I think we feel it would be remiss to just assume that this would just support English classrooms, because that's not where all the work is when you get to the secondary level.
Thank you.
It seemed like when we initially discussed it, when Ron first brought it up, when we discussed it, I kind of thought we were all on the same page that we wanted a more writing and reading component to the position, someone with a background in ELA, because I think if someone has a background in ELA, you can go across the disciplines. You could take that knowledge, but someone who truly had a mastery, of writing and reading. So it just seemed odd when we were reading the description of the job that it kind of, that's not what you emphasize. And I think that is a specific kind of person rather than keeping it more general and open-ended.
It's the nature of secondary. Coaches at the secondary level, it's not, or, you know, most coaches really live at the elementary level, and they're literacy coaches, and that's exactly what they are. But at the secondary level, the model rarely looks that way. So I can only tell you, like in my last life before I came here, which seems like another era, it was, but our coach, who supported all teachers, supported reading and literacy across, she had been a library media specialist, and she had a deep knowledge of English, but she also was able to support teachers across. That was long before the Common Core and the expectations of literacy. And when I say the expectations, I'll target it specifically to the 10th grade regions. If we are not preparing our students as readers and writers in the content area, we are not preparing our students for what those expectations are. New York State never thought that our English teachers would be doing that. So I think what we were trying to do here was acknowledge that in the secondary world, staff developers are not it's not as clean as it is at the elementary level. So I think what we're trying to do is target the right match, because the person is going to have to support social studies and science teachers in addition to English teachers if we're going to be successful, and if that person is going to be successful.
What is, and now, you know, I'll freely say I know how to hire attorneys, I know how to hire legal assistants, I don't know how to hire this position. So, forgetting what the ad says, who is this person that we're targeting? I mean, what is this person doing now that we're trying to hire and bring them to Irvington?
So ideally what you want is...
Because that helps you focus on what your advertisement is for the position, right?
What we want is a master teacher. So what we want is somebody who has deep teaching experience. I think that the person would more than likely have that ELA, that English background. I don't think that anybody would dispute that that would be a strong background, but it would be misleading to create a job description that doesn't include the other, because quite honestly, we will not be doing what we need to do if we have someone who can only support the English classroom. So this description is really about a model of professional development. So I guess the person is someone who has deep teaching experience.
So you're looking for much more of a senior teacher?
Yeah, I mean, and I will share with you that I think part of the issue, and this is total speculation on my part, but you know, in these crazy times, that's a person who would be giving up tenure in another district.
Right.
In a position that anyone who knows the way the world goes, these are the positions, as we experienced here, we had these positions. And when we got into tough budget times, those were the positions that would go. So in all fairness, I also think somebody who's willing to jump off and leave their full-time tenured position, it's a leap of faith for somebody to do that. So I do think that that's another layer. Not impossible, but I would guess that that would maybe be a deterrent.
So, as we've had subsequent board meetings and information's come out, kind of when you said, like, I guess I would call it a master teacher, because to me, the most important thing of this, I guess I viewed it when I suggested it more from the kid perspective than from the teacher perspective, and I viewed it as, what can we do in this budget that's really going to support every kid, you know, the most kids that we can in the classroom. And I really viewed it as a way, since how many times as a board have we had the conversation about how do we raise the level of instruction? How do we make it more consistent across the board? How do we bring it up? So I viewed this position as a way to maybe attempt. I'm not, you know, who knows if it's going to be successful, we hope, but it was at least a way to try to put some dollars toward raising the level of instruction. And also, I think to some degree, we also talked a little bit, I can't remember if it was in the meeting or after, but about differentiating also in terms of, again, from a kid perspective, how can this person add value to some of the kids in the classes that maybe aren't getting as much out of it, especially with the Common Core and the testing, preparation or whatever. So that was where I was coming from, really. And I know we did start with English, but I know it's evolved. And I gotta say, I'm gonna back away from the English a little bit, especially in light of all the conversations that came up at the board meeting last time, which is, it's all about spending resources, and we're spending a lot of resources on English right now. And I'm hoping that this is more kind of a different focus than what we've generally been adding. So that's kind of what I was thinking of in terms of where I've evolved to, I guess. I agree in terms of a master teacher. That seems to be the key. And as you're saying that, I'm almost wondering if maybe it's even someone who's retired who's looking to come back. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe
I said senior teacher instead of saying retirement. I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking the same thing.
I mean, sometimes, we've had some luck with that. I don't know. It just might be a different pool to target, because I could see how that would be difficult, as you described, given where we've come from. And the other thing in terms of, your description of bringing in the other classes, to me, it's more about raising the level, and wherever we need it. I guess my thing when we originally heard about it, I guess Maria and I talked about it in curriculum meeting, was I understand why you kind of targeted the upper level, 6 to 12, but I had mentioned that I hope that if there was a need in the lower level for this kind of a person to come in and troubleshoot or just add value, that we would be flexible with that. I understand it's difficult to advertise for a K to 12 person, but really in my mind it was, as needed, even if it's in 5th grade, this person is here and be willing to help and kind of raise the level. So that's kind of my view on it.
Yeah, I think we're saying the same things. I think our real challenge is going to be finding that right person, and to think about the environment that Raina spoke of. So if we find ourselves in a position where our pool doesn't look strong enough, or we interview and we don't see the level or the experience that we're looking for, we'll come back and have conversations about other possibilities.
Okay, good.
Good, thank you.
All right, our second discussion item tonight is fund balance. And for context, this is the money that the district maintains as a balance that is essentially allowed at 4%. That's the maximum that we can keep in our fund balance by state law. And every year we tend to keep our fund balance completely funded, and then there is some money left over that historically we have used to pay tax certs. So tonight we're going to talk about the anticipated experience that we think is going to happen by June 30th at the end of this year. Bev has run some numbers. Bev is going to take us through some discussion. I would just explain to the public that we have to maintain a certain degree of confidentiality about the actual tax cert payments that we might be making, because many of these are still in litigation or negotiation. And so therefore, we're not going to reference anything specifically that would obviously be very damaging to the district in terms of our ability to negotiate a favorable settlement. But we will talk generally about what we think we need to keep in fund balance and where the remaining funds would go.
Thank you. So, fund
Make sure to
balance.
speak to the mic.
Turned it off 'cause I thought it was. Okay. Yeah. Fund balance at the end of the year is derived of 3 portions. The first portion would be the $422,000, which is the first line item in the 15-16 budget. The 4%, which the state says that we are allowed to maintain, and that money is used for emergencies, but it also helps us to support the district's operations throughout the summer, because we do not get tax money until October, and we have naturally a lot of expenditures before that, so you use that as cash flow. And then if there's any remaining funds, then it's up to the board to allocate those funds. I have run some estimated figures, and again, they're very estimated until after the final audit. But based upon those figures and what we have determined to be pending settlements for tax certs, the pending settlements exceed the amount that we say would be over the 4% or the 422,000. So therefore, I am going to recommend that the board put any remaining funds above the 4% and the 422,000 into the tax cert reserve.
Okay, and do you want to just add a footnote with regard to the new capital reserve fund and how it relates or doesn't relate to this conversation?
The capital reserve fund, which the voters approved in May, actually does not take effect until July 1. So therefore, we're closing the books for the 14-15 school year, June 30th. So we cannot use any of this year's fund balance to fund that, because you have to make the allocation as of June 30th, when in fact that fund does not start until July 1. One day makes a lot of difference.
It's not applicable
Correct.
to this discussion.
Correct.
It will be next year.
Next year, yes.
Comments from board members on the thinking of putting the balance beyond the 4% into the tax cert reserve fund? Rhea?
I mean, I'm in favor of doing it, knowing what we have coming down in the coming years. I'm in favor of putting it into the tax reserve and not going after a bond to make the payments.
Yeah, I think it's prudent, but I may react to others.
Yeah, Robin?
I actually think that, having such a large amount left over this year, last year, it seems like that is a trend. I mean, maybe not, but it seems like we usually do come in under budget. And it's our tax rate, I feel like taxes are getting high, they're creeping up again, and I feel like from a community perspective, we really need to take a serious look at when we have leftover money in the budget. There are obviously a variety of options of what we could do with that, and one of which is also looking at refunding a little bit to the community. When I kind of look at the stream that we're looking at, it does seem like there's a possibility of actually maybe even taking a little bit and refunding it to the community, putting some of it in the tax reserve, most of it in the tax reserve, and then not having this current year's snapshot bear the burden of all of these tax reserves, which, as we know, are from a body of years in the past, and hopefully in the future we won't have as many when they reassess. But it seems like it's a big burden to put on this year to pay for all of that. So probably in the minority, but I would actually recommend doing a slight refund to the community to help offset the burden of all the taxes in Irvington, and then putting the bulk of it in the tax cert reserve.
I would just add to that point that if we were to do that, and while we can't discuss all of the numbers, that the amount of money that would come back per family would be in the tens of dollars and not even in the hundreds of dollars. And if you look at it that way versus having to go out and bond the payment of these tax certs just to enable us to give back to the public literally tens of dollars, I think that most people in the community would say, wait a second, why incur all of those financing costs and interest and everything going on when the money's there? Use it and save us money going forward, because that's effectively what we're doing. We're in an amazing situation. I guess only in Irvington could be a negative that you have a surplus at the end of the year, right? A lot of school districts don't have that. And for us to, be sitting here with extra money at the end of the year with our budget, and being able to actually save money in the future by applying that, not having to bond for tax certs, which we hear other we've done before, most other school districts would do if they didn't have this extra money. Seems to me that, again, the prudent thing to do would be to apply the money, against the tax certs.
What is the?
Can I?
I just wanted one point of clarification, just to come back right back to you. What's the amount of money that's in our tax cert reserve fund now, presently? Because that's a public number, right?
Right, I don't have the actual amount because some of it is encumbered,
Right.
okay? But the available would be like 1.4,
1.4 million.
but we have a lot more.
Of course, it is. We're anticipating coming on top of that. Sorry, Ron, I just
Yeah,
wanted to
no, just to directly respond to that, it wouldn't be my intention to actually create a situation where we would have to go out and bond. It just would be my intention to kind of look at the flow, the cash flow, and determine if, again, if we're paying for things out of this year's surplus that we wouldn't need to pay out until the 16-17 budget. It seems like those numbers might be fair to consider doing something else with. So just to clarify that to you. And the other thing is, 2 years of surplus, hopefully we're fortunate, but, again, that's 2 years of the community increasing their taxes where all this money is left over and not giving it back. That's part of my thought process.
Except it's not technically a surplus if in the end we have paid out the money to refunds and tax certs. I mean, it's a surplus on June 30th, but then immediately it does get paid out over the course of time.
Yes and no, but I mean, to have over $1 million in a budget left over at the end of the year for 2 years running, it's unusual to me. It means perhaps we're not, and again, I know this case, it was just, we were fortunate. But when you start looking at multiple years of, 7-figure numbers left over, and it's a judgment call. I mean, if what you're saying is true, then we can increase taxes even more and just keep putting more aside into the tax rate.
That nobody's suggesting.
No, but I'm just saying, so again, to me, it's more about who bears the burden of this tax cert. So I'm just trying to think about how to allocate it more evenly over people over the years than, and as I said, a lot of people feel like it's the way the law is written, but a lot of people feel like it's unfair for us today to pay for the tax cert that was from 2007. Technically that shouldn't be a cost for us today, but that's the way the law is written. So then, that's just it. So I'm just thinking it might be fairer than to allocate it over a few years. I know it's a small amount of money, but I think people would appreciate it, and it's just my opinion.
Okay. I mean, is it feasible to consider some version of Robin's suggestion of like using cash flow to our advantage? Or does that become potentially, so that I think what, essentially she's saying, pay the money out, and then as the tax cert refunds come due, essentially plan for those to the best of our ability, and essentially hope that the balancing act that we've done allows for us to pay out those refunds without having to go and to bond it, which then of course would be stupid because that costs the district money.
Well, that's what I've been doing, is planning for the future so that I'm covering all of the payments that the board has already approved in prior settlements. Even though they're multiple years, I've still been covering your liabilities
Right.
that are forthcoming. It's the board's decision how you ever want to allocate that surplus. If you want to give it back to taxpayers and then hopefully have the rest of the money to pay these, that's fine. If we don't have the money, then we have to go out and bond. That's your decision.
And so, to put a finer point on it, it is a bit of there's science to it, but there's going to be some part of it that's a guessing game because we don't know exactly when the payments are going to be due.
But that's also the point of the budget. I mean, for anybody to walk away from here thinking that we purposely build into our budgets 7 figures of fluff, I think is just not true. I mean, what happens is, and what has happened the last couple of years is, students move in and out of the district. Some students need special needs services, some students come out of that. There are cost savings. We've been lucky enough to have some material cost savings that we've been able to now use for these purposes without having to use financing and incur additional costs. So to say, well, we're gonna return, you know, $20 a family, but then incur financing costs a year from now, because we would then either need to bond or increase our taxes then to solve for the money that we just paid back. I just don't see it as a prudent way to go.
And just the one thing that I would say, and we're all doing, I think, a very good job of being cautious because of litigation and the things that we're managing. But be mindful of the fact that, you know, when we're talking about current exposure, we're talking about a handful of instances that we're managing right now, but there's a number of others that are coming down the pike that are in the hopper. So when we're talking about the figures that Bev and our attorneys are discussing, that's only a portion of the pie. There's many more that are waiting in line to go through the courts right now.
Right. Well, and Bev started off by saying that the amount of money that we anticipate paying out is greater than the amount of money that will be left over.
Correct.
It exceeds it.
Right.
This
Right.
district has been hit with some enormous settlements.
Right.
And I can't see an end at the end of the line here. I just can't.
The community-wide reassessment, reevaluation should level this out. We would hope, in theory, the idea of this is to settle and level taxes
Right.
a little bit, so it should slow that process down. But we have to be mindful that we have years and years of catch-up to get to that point. But I think the most pressing point from my seat is the fact that Bev says even when we consider the money in the current reserve, we consider our current fund balance, our current anticipated obligation still exceeds that dollar amount.
Right. That's the problem. It seems to me that if we were looking at a situation where the opposite were true, then Ms. Garner's suggestion would be appropriate. But given the fact that your numbers are showing that mathematically we need more money than we have.
We may have to bond it anyway.
Right.
So-
This doesn't seem to be the year to be doing that,
Right.
we need to have at least the projections working in our favor, and knowing that even the projections might change, because we do get last-minute settlements that we weren't anticipating.
Right.
All right, well, I mean, you've made your
But-
good point, right, which is why we have a board of 5 or 4 right now. Any other comments? No? Okay.
It'll be on the next board agenda.
All right. Well, we have an opportunity to hear from our community, and I can imagine that there's at least one community member who might have comments for the board relating to what we just talked about. But this is also the opportunity for the community to comment on anything that appears in the agenda tonight, and it is a big agenda, so have at it. The mic is open, and just remember the rules, 2 minutes, and please state your name.
Della Lenz. I agree with Robin with the 2 years of excessive surplus. Bev, I have a question. I know that we're paying off the 2007 tax cert that was filed. Was that grievance of the taxes done in 2007?
I'm sorry, which
How does it
one?
work? Why does it go back for a number of years? Is that when it was grieved and then it's the lawsuit?
You want just a little primer on how the tax certs work?
Yeah.
They can file for a number of years going back.
So if they file in 2014, they could do it for how many years back?
I don't know if there's a limit. Our legal counsel is right here.
Typically, the attorneys that represent petitioners do so on contingency. Because of that, they like to have the assessments pile up for usually it's 4 or 5, I've seen as high as 6 or 7 years in terms of filing, meeting their statute of limitations, and then moving forward in terms of mitigating much later in the process.
I guess that's what I'm asking. When's the statute of limitations?
Not sure, I believe it's 7 years, but I can confirm that and get back to the board.
Okay. And how long does it take to settle a tax cert?
How long?
Yeah.
Typically, in terms of when the petitioner is looking to move forward, they typically settle anywhere between 6 to 9 months.
From when they file to when they settle?
When they're prepared to move forward to trial.
They file it,
Not
they
necessarily when they file
So they file it every year?
it every year.
So we know in advance, like, how much we might, because I know in years past, Well, actually, there's a formula, and the Greenberg tax assessor came and gave a whole presentation on generally it's a X percentage, which is give or take. But you know that you're going to pay, they know that they're going to settle on, I can't remember what it is now, we're going back years, but they had said you kind of have an idea of about what you're going to settle on. My question is if we know, even planning for that much, why aren't we putting it in the budget? Just based on past history, what we settle on, the percentage that we settle on, at least budgeting it so that the stakeholders actually know what we're voting on. My second question is, with that much money in the surplus, why aren't we using it for our facilities? And because I don't want to see us go or waiting to fill up this tax reserve, or having to go out to bond again. The basketball hoops at Main Street School are disgusting. The playground is gross. Kids play on that field for lacrosse, and there's holes all over. I don't know, I can't find any buildings and grounds reports, but is there anything in buildings and grounds that we can do to maintain our fields? What have we done to maintain our current grass fields? Irrigation.
Kelly, you've asked about
I'm sorry.
5 questions. So why don't we start with the 2 big ones, which is
You got it.
why aren't we budgeting for future tax cert payments, right?
Mhm.
And the second one is why aren't we using the surplus in a more useful way around the district to improve our facilities, right?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. I was
Okay.
just paraphrasing.
As far as budgeting, 2 things. One, right now, if you'll remember, a couple years ago, we added $700,000 a year to the budget to pay off a 5-year ban for tax certs because we did not have the money. And at that time, I recommended putting the $700,000 in for 5 years to pay the ban versus going out with a 15-year bond, because then you're incurring a lot more interest and expense, and it also weighs poorly on your ratings, your bond ratings. So therefore, in another, next year will be year 3. In 2 years after that, then there will be $700,000 in the budget that, when we're considering budget at that time, the board can determine whether they want to eliminate that $700,000 line in the budget or change it from a debt service payment to transfer to tax reserve. So then you are funding part of the tax certs, okay? But that's a couple years down the road.
But is
If you added now,
yeah.
if right now we estimate that we have a pending litigation for, I don't know, $1 million, okay? And we add that, we still have to go within the tax cap. So if we added that $1 million, we would have to either get a 60% overage or have to cut programs in order to stay under the cap. Okay.
So can I just suggest something? Rather than having you guys go back and forth right here, if there's something you're not understanding from Bev's answer, I would again suggest taking it offline.
Yeah, I think we'll take
Because
it offline.
I know that you care very much about this because we've had conversations
Yeah.
about it.
Well, one question does arise is, are we keeping it high so that because we have to adjust for the tax cap? Like.
No.
Because that's, from a stakeholder's perspective, it is concerning, like,
No,
we have to.
because when we first present budgets, we always have to do cuts because we're over the tax cap when we first start, and that's when the board starts cutting everything because we're over the tax cap during the first rounds of presentations.
I think part of what you're questioning is the ability of any one person or an institution to budget to an absolutely perfect number.
Oh, no. I'm saying $1 million is not exactly.
But think about it, when you budget going into the future for 12 months on a number that is $56 million.
That's less than 2% of the budget.
It's a very.
I've never heard of $1 million surplus in all my years in Irvington.
I think we shouldn't necessarily talk about hearsay in the sense of, because we could go back and figure out all of the history in terms of what's been left over. But the fact is that Bev has done an excellent job in terms of maintaining our finances in the district, and that we have, as a board, been supportive of the idea of maintaining our 4% fund balance. And so to the extent that there is some money left over beyond that, if we had no tax certs, well, then we would have a very interesting discussion to have as a board and a community, because then Robin's suggestion would be spot on, right? Because then you would return the money. But the fact is, we have tax certs that we have to pay out over time. And Bev has been managing the budget and managing the surplus such that the tax certs are paid out with minimal hardship to the district, which is to say that, and except for the example that she gave, we generally have not had to bond in order to do that. And we know that other districts do bond occasionally to pay out their tax certs.
Well, we have too, and Bev's been doing a great job, and my question is more towards the board, is with this surplus, and at the beginning of the budget process, we are doing cuts, and then we end up with $1 million surplus. So A, were those cuts necessary? And B, I don't want to see another bond being taken out for capital improvements, or, you know, oh, now we have to fix Main Street School, or...
Suggestion on that one, because I think you may not understand how the savings that turns into that $1 million actually arises. And so maybe that could be a discussion with Bev as well about what, because if you look at it from a line item approach, these are things that, you know, you conservatively budget, but if suddenly you have 40 children who need special needs and you budgeted 50, knowing that money is savings to your bottom line.
Okay, well, I totally agree with you.
So
Absolutely. What I would like to see is to look at it and say, okay, could we have, you know, are we being more, because you have to pad the budget. That's a given. You know, are we doing it responsibly, which I'm sure, you know, we are. Could we spend that money towards our fields now? I'm not looking forward to another bond vote saying, oh, well, we need money to do Main Street School playground.
Let me address that second question.
Or anything in buildings and
As
grounds.
far as using the surplus for facilities, you cannot do that. It's illegal, because you cannot expend more than the voters approved for 15-16. If the voters have voted for a $50 million budget and you had a $1 million surplus, you cannot spend $51 million. It's illegal.
maybe we could do it. Right.
So where's the surplus?
Surplus is off of 1 year, the voters vote for the following budget. So we're talking of a surplus for the 14-15 school year. You're saying expend those funds for facilities. Next year, we can't do that.
Well, when did we find this out? When did we know that there was going to be a surplus?
We don't find out the exact dollar amount until after our audit is done,
Which is when?
in July, August.
But we haven't we kind of know ballpark. You know, this isn't like a time for a discussion on details. All I'm saying is that, A, could we find a way to actually look at this earlier to say, you know what, we anticipate, you know, a surplus at the end of the year. Why don't we look at facilities and spend it this year? You know,
I think that question is an appropriate question.
details aren't necessary here. I
don't
just,
mean to
yeah.
reject it out of hand. It's just the mechanics of what we're allowed to do in terms of moving money around is limited by law, and we have to handle things in a certain way. For example, we couldn't just move money into the capital reserve fund. That has to be done by voters. You know?
No, I'm not saying in the capital reserve fund. I'm saying looking at this, when we know that the surplus is coming, like, oh, we didn't have those special ed kids.
I want to say that the mechanics of how we move the money around is something that are...
I didn't say capital reserve fund. We have a lot of liberal, yeah, I'm sorry.
Just trying to explain that there is a process for how we do this. And I'm not rejecting your comment out of hand, because you're saying, can't we look at this ahead of time and then maybe make better use of the money?
Well, I think, for example, just to my interpretation of what Della's saying is, for example, if you're saying some of it was maybe because people moved out of district, so money that we thought we were going to spend, we didn't. So we probably knew that in September or October. So Della's saying, well, if we know in September or October there's this chunk of money there, maybe at that point it makes sense to say, well, we could do more now than we thought we could do before. I think that's all she's saying.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Then what happens if another child moves
Yeah.
in February?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's one of the,
Science.
But
it's
it
one-
still has to be done.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that does that.
Well, we don't
No.
really look at new capital improvements, we kind of look at the ones we had approved. She's saying maybe we should even, we can have a conversation at different points in the year to say, okay, if there's more money sitting there than we expected, maybe we could do more this year.
I understand your point, I don't know.
Yeah, thank you for the point.
I mean, I think what we can do, based on your comments, first of all, is going forward, because we're obviously talking about next year, really, because this year is done, aside from the fact, the discussion that we're having right now, which is about taking the remainder and putting it into the tax cert reserve fund, which is a good place to put it, since we're gonna have to pay it out anyway. But going forward next year, I think we can definitely consider your suggestion.
Okay.
Any other comments from anybody in the community on anything on the agenda tonight?
The only thing I suggested, since Rob is here, if there was interest in having him speak at the top.
Oh, okay. Should we have him do that now?
We can, if the board is inclined. I was just thinking that Rob from the IEF is here this evening, and we're going to accept some grants from IEF, and we certainly want to give Rob a few words tonight. And since it is a number of other items, and it could be 20 minutes before we get there, that I thought there would be the opportunity, Rob, if you want to go to the mic and talk about some of the work of the IEF
Please.
and your great support of our district.
You are a member of the community, and the mic is still open.
That works.
Yeah, sure, you can use the official mic.
So I'm Rob Firpo-Capiello. I'm co-president of the Irvington Education Foundation. Most of you know, and I think most people in the community know, we're a small group of parent volunteers. There's about 25 of us. We raise about $100,000 and disperse about $100,000 each school year right here in the community for education programs that are proposed by the administrators, the faculty, and the staff. This year we have, I think, deepened our partnership with the district, and we're really proud of the results. This spring we have approved a wide variety of grants across all 4 schools. Just to touch on a few, a 3D printer for Dow's Lane School. Destination Imagination will continue at Main Street School in the second phase of a pilot that we are funding. At the middle school, many exciting programs at the middle school. A new one is called Map It, which is a geometric geography look at Washington, D.C. And at the high school, we're funding a new program called LEAP that is aimed at a segment, an underserved segment that has not really been identified until now. And we're really, really proud to take that initiative. Also, this school year saw the brand new Innovation Fund, which is a real partnership with the district. I got to work closely with Dr. Harrison and Mr. Cohen. The Innovation Fund was made possible in part by a grant from Sunnyside Bank, or a donation from Sunnyside Bank, and an anonymous community member. Innovation Fund is based on a simple idea. Instead of asking administrators, teachers, staff, or parents what kind of programs, what kind of education enrichment programs should be in the district, ask the students. And in January, we asked the students at the high school, what if? And got an incredible variety of proposals. We ended up funding 9 of them. And now, thanks to Innovation Fund, there's a high school student teaching engineering at Main Street School. The Latin Club is teaching Latin at the middle school. Some high school students are developing a weather app. And right in this room this weekend was a production of 12 Angry Men that we helped to fund. And the innovation there was some drama. Students said, we want to be in a straight play. We don't want to be in a musical. We want to be in a straight play. That happened here in this room. It was covered in the paper. And I was excited to see the local press took an interest in the Innovation Fund. The Enterprise ran an editorial saying that what we've developed here in Irvington as the Innovation Fund could serve as a model to other districts in Westchester. Finally, the IEF was extremely honored to be the custodians of donations for the Sarah Carnahan Memorial Outdoor Learning Space. The word memorial to a lot of people brings to mind a fixed monument. But what Randy and Delina have developed for Dow's Lane is a living, breathing space where kids can participate in the kind of curriculum-based outdoor activities that Sarah Carnahan herself devoted herself to. We're just very honored to have played any role in that. Finally, just personally, I'd like to thank the district and the board for all your support this year. The IEF has a lot more work to do, and we look forward to accomplishing even more in future years.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you for all those grants. They definitely make a difference.
Yeah, yeah.
Can I have a question? I think after all these years, I know it just kind of evolves over time, but how does it work in district with the teachers? How do you encourage them and incite them to apply for grants to the IEF? How does that work?
Do you want to answer? Do you want to answer?
I can give the IEF side of the answer. This year we took the back to school events very seriously. Not that we had considered it an afterthought in the past, but this year we looked at it partly as a marketing fundraising initiative and partly as an initiative to encourage some new ideas from teachers. Perfectly happy to continue funding the ones that recur year over year, but you wanted to encourage some new thinking as well. So I personally appeared at the end of August there was a back to school breakfast for faculty and staff, and I appeared and not only explained what the IEF did, but encouraged people to approach us with new ideas. And we also met with Raina and Connie to discuss a schedule, but also to pursue this idea of like, well, where do the new ideas come from? Because, I mean, I guess you probably experience this on the board all the time. It's easy to say we want new ideas, and then you hear 15 ideas that are like, oh, well, that wasn't what I had in mind. So there's a give and take, and so that was our end of it. We regarded it literally as a marketing and public relations initiative to drum up ideas.
Thanks.
I would say from within the schools, it's changed over time. So originally, IEF was much more, I would say the grants tended to be a little bit more open-ended. I could be an individual third grade teacher who had a great idea, and I would submit my grant, and I might do something with my class. I think what's happened over time is that as we've tried to provide common experiences for all students, we've really encouraged grade levels or teams at the middle school or departments at the high school that if you're going to do something, that it would be something that you do for all kids, if it's going to be something that goes across. I think the other thing that we used to see that we've tried to work with is to ensure that the grants align with the curriculum. Because it also used to be that they could be, I don't use the word random in a bad way, but not necessarily connected to the curriculum. And now all of a sudden a teacher is going to do a grant that it takes 3 weeks out of the classroom, and wait a minute, now I need to do all these other things. Well, how am I going to do those 3 weeks? So I think what we've done is, to a certain degree, systematize it so that we ensure that all students are getting that opportunity, but we're also then encouraging those new ideas, but just asking for them to be integrated with the curriculum rather than being an add-on.
Thanks.
Thank you. Back to the mic.
I would love to see the list of grants, because it's exciting, and I can't find it on the
I think they're in board docs.
They're in board
on the
docs.
IEF. I mean, can we put it in the agenda and put it on board docs so that people?
Board docs, Stella.
Yep.
No, it's not.
Go online, look in board
I
docs.
did.
It's there as an attachment. I'm looking at it right now, and it's posted in public content.
Okay, it wasn't there before the meeting.
I didn't put it there now.
It's in public.
If you don't see it and you need it, email Elaine tomorrow, and we'll get you a copy. But
We're not trying to hide that information.
No, it's exciting.
Right. I think you also put it on the IEF website. Yeah, it's on the IEF website also.
I'm just saying sell it, because I don't think people know.
Right.
Hiding it on
All right, so any other
Thank you,
comments? Oh, that was it, right, because Rob was the last. Thank you, nice job.
Thanks.
So we're on to our consent agenda. And as always, we sort of accept the agenda items and then we talk about them before we vote. So tonight, actually, we do have, We actually have, just realized the committee report is kind of out of sequence. Normally that's before. So why don't we just do the committee report first, which is 9, and really not at all part of the consent agenda. And that's the curriculum committee from Maria and Robin. That's the May 21st curriculum committee, the last one of the year.
I'm not gonna go through all of them. I mean, I'll be
We
overview.
actually scheduled another one.
I mean, on the agenda, we were ambitious. We had a bunch of items, which we ended up getting in more depth, conversation in depth about more of kind of the curriculum by grade, so to speak, and the Rubicon Atlas and how that worked and what they were doing. I don't even know where to start on all this. I mean, we went through grade by grade, essentially, and we talked about where we were in terms of Rubicon Atlas and where we hope to be shortly, and what things we're adding, and I mean, it was very useful. I mean, the only thing I could think of that might make the most sense is
Do it in public.
for us to, well, I mean, to sit here and go through all this, I was almost thinking we type up notes from the meeting, and then we have it where we could post it, and people could actually access it and see it, as opposed to
Sure.
listening to us go through this whole long list of what they put together.
Better use of time.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem, what do you think? Do you want to look at that?
Probably after, because we didn't finish, remember?
Yeah, no, that's why I laughed. We were ambitious, we had other things on the
So
agenda. and we
schedule
didn't even
another
get through
meeting.
the Rubicon Atlas.
Right, so why don't we just, after your next meeting,
Yeah.
is that before the end of the year? No.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, before next Tuesday, though?
No,
No.
no,
We
it's
could
the end of the week.
We could create it afterwards and
It's-
circulate
We can
it,
still
and then-
publish it and
Yeah.
have a
Right.
conversation.
Okay.
It just seems to make more sense.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
agree.
Okay.
Yeah,
And we can invite you back to come into the audience and talk about what happened curriculum. All right, so we'll just look forward to that, and we'll have a discussion once we get the printed comments. So back to the consent agenda, which I think we need Bob here to vote, which consists of 10.2 through 10.7, 11.1, 12.2 through 12.12.
12.1?
No, because we're going to pull out our tenure appointments, as we typically do, and 13.1 to 13.17.
Which ones? Well, we're going to talk about a bunch of these, right? I mean, I have a
Yes,
bunch
we
of
always
to
talk about them, right? So
Right.
remember, we
Yeah.
just accept we have a motion to discuss, and do we need a motion to just change this agenda?
So which ones
no, I
again?
just-
are you
We're
pulling
pulling out
out?
10.1.
Okay.
Well, we're not
Ten-
pulling it out
10.1 is already out. We're pulling out 12.2.
12.2.
12.1.
12.1.
You're saying 10.1?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm getting my,
And
Yeah.
12.1.
I said it right the first time.
Yes.
Okay.
and
12.1, 10.
10.1.
All right, I changed it.
Okay.
Okay,
That's
do we need the motion then to change the agenda, or is it?
No, just a motion to,
For the consent,
To
right.
move
So can I-
those other
Yeah,
items.
exactly. So can I have we need a motion to move those items? You just need
The consent agenda.
Can I have a motion to accept the consent agenda as I described it, which again is 10.2 to 10.7, 11.1, 12.2 to 12.12, and 13.1 to 13.17?
That's
I said it
good.
right correctly.
You did.
That's very good.
10.6, 10.7.
Robin, may I have a second, please? I said it correctly, trust me. I'm still looking to see whether you're going to
Well,
vote against anything.
yeah, you're pulling out just two things, right?
Correct.
Okay, well, let's have the discussion and then I'll make a
Well,
motion.
you
Second,
have to-
Devin.
you have to
Okay.
second the motion.
Second.
Thank you. All right, so,
Questions?
questions on anything besides 10.1, which isn't part of the consent agenda, and 12.2? 12.1. So let's just make a list of the questions that people might have, shall we? Here's my pen.
Ready to do that, or-
Here it is.
Go, no.
Go ahead.
I,
Go ahead.
12.3.
12.3.
And I actually just think it's something that needs to be called out in public, which is that there's letter agreements, and our letter agreements generally follow a specific pattern. They generally follow the contracts that we have with the appropriate unions. And it was brought to us to not follow that contract in one specific case in terms of a raise. And I'm torn. I mean, I gotta say, I'm upset as a board member. It's what I said. I'm upset as a board member that we do a very long and in-depth, I think, budget planning system. And it feels like certain things are more appropriate to be brought up during budget planning and not brought up once we're done in terms of salary increases. I'm torn. I'm actually torn in terms of, you know, on principle, I kind of feel like, certainly with salary, I can't remember, but this, a couple times over the past few years, things have been brought up right after the budget vote, which I felt was disappointing, since it was information that might have impacted the budget vote. And I don't think, whereas this is material enough to have impacted the budget vote, I do think it behooves us, and for planning and for budgeting purposes, that we do have discussions about variations in salary that aren't going to be out of the ordinary.
Do you want to vote against this, in which case we would pull it?
I'm torn. I mean, I kind of felt like I had to make a statement. I think the amount of money is, in the context of the budget, the amount of money is not that significant, so I don't think I want to vote against it.
Okay.
And it is not all a statement of the person. It's just, in general, how we do business as a board. I think it's proper planning to get all this information out there during budget session. And then once the budget's done, as a board, we should not, over the next 2 months that are left in the school district, to me, or at least the next month that's left, we shouldn't be kind of hearing about new things that we want to add to the budget for next year. It just seems like that's what we do for months, from just, you know, January till May, we talk about budget. So,
okay.
That's my statement.
Any other things that you want to call out? 'Cause you said 12.3, right?
Yeah, I had a question or two on 12.5, the lead evaluators, and 12.6. What is the role of a lead evaluator? Is it, and there are other people evaluating outside of the lead evaluator? I didn't understand that.
Lead eval, it's a technicality now as a part of the APPR that we need to certify that our administrators, so Dr. Harrison is the lead evaluator for principals, and the principals are lead evaluators for teachers, and we have to certify that our administrators are prepared and that we do work throughout the year that prepares them to be lead evaluators.
So do other people evaluate outside of lead evaluators, or essentially no, if you're the evaluators essentially? Okay.
Yeah, so in order to observe and evaluate, really not even observe, I'm going to say that, in order to evaluate teachers, you have to be certified as a lead evaluator.
Okay. And principals?
So the principals, the assistant principals, me, all the administrators.
They're the next ones, they're 12.6.
12 points.
For teachers, right, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
for administrators, the reason why it's really only Dr. Harrison is because only principals fall under the APPR.
Okay.
Assistant principals don't, directors don't. They're not required by law to be
evaluated.
They're not required by law to be evaluated under the APPR regulations.
Really? Oh, that's interesting.
They still
And
go
they're-
through the same process.
Teachers, also, just as an FYI, guidance counselors, support service providers, they don't fall under the APPR either.
So how can we
Librarians.
still evaluate them, or
We
no by law?
use the same system for everybody, but under the actual scoring of the APPR, they don't fall under that.
So can you say who else that is again? The APs, the guidance counselors?
So any administrator, the only principals, so of the administrative pool, only principals fall under the APPR. Again, we still conduct the same level of observation and evaluation, but they don't get a score. Teachers, for the teacher side,
Yeah.
guidance counselors,
Yeah.
and mostly PPS, support people, psychologists, speech and language,
Okay.
OT, they don't fall under it. Librarians only do if they actually see classes of students. So at the elementary level, Christina Rosenblatt does because she sees students. Whereas at the secondary level, the nature of a secondary library media specialist is not to have students.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So we evaluate them, but we don't have to use the same instrument?
We use the same instrument,
Without the grade.
but we don't have to report a score to New York State.
Okay. Wow, okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, wait. Are we going to talk about 13.1, the school facility report card? Isn't that part of the consent
But
agenda?
yes, and I recall that we had talked about it in an earlier meeting, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just because it was
can,
here, I didn't know if Bev was gonna say a few words about it.
I will be more than happy to. Okay. The school facility report cards are an SED annual requirement since 1998, and the purpose is to prioritize the facility needs to improve the learning environment and to protect the health and safety of the students and staff. And the report ensures that the district is in full compliance with all of the mandates, such as the building condition survey, annual visual inspections, 5-year facility plan, required health and safety committees, lead testing, ADHERA, integrated pest management, indoor air quality, hazardous chemicals, and radon testing. So we're in complete compliance.
And is next year the year that we have to hire the engineer?
Yes, and that's on the board agenda tonight to approve the award for the building condition survey.
Right. 5-year plan.
5-year.
Anything else?
13.7, the commingled contract, is that new? I don't remember us ever having an option.
That is
Is that
new.
because of the change of the law?
Yes,
Okay.
that is new.
Right, but I
We
didn't
had
realize
to
they
wait
still gave us an
for the
option.
law was passed, and our attorneys agreed to it, and so there was a sole bidder for the commingled part of the contract.
And Montauk's aware of that too?
Yes,
Okay,
it was part of the overall bid.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we had changed our policy previously to incorporate the commingling.
Right, I remember we talked about it, I just didn't realize that we'd actually have another person that was kind of in the mix at the time. Okay. Okay, I think that's all I have. Yep.
Okay. All right. So at this point, we can have a vote because you're okay with that 13.7. All right, I guess you could leave it in, right? So all in favor of the consent agenda?
Aye.
So that's 4-0. Now, we have just a few lingering items here. We have 10.1, and that is a stipulation agreement. Just have to get to it. Sorry. There it is. My papers are, there it is, I got it. So can I have a motion to accept this resolution?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Wait, I need to recuse myself.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And one decision, whatever it's called, recusal. And can I also get to our tenure appointments? So typically we would sort of pull these out because tenure appointments are such an important part of what the board does. So tonight we have 4 members of our district that are up for tenure, including Dr. Kaur sitting at our dais here. Congratulations. Marion Kennedy, Crystal Maraglia, and Margaret Barrett. So tonight we will vote on their tenure. Can I have a motion for this resolution to make these 4 individuals tenured professionals?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I abstain.
You're abstaining, okay.
I'd like to congratulate Dr. Kaur on her
Thank you.
6th tenure in the district, I think.
Actually, it's only my 3rd.
Third, okay.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so that gets us through. I guess I should also just, highlight the fact that, again, we have Gina's donation, which was among our consent agenda. Thank you again, Gina. We have a donation from the PTSA that was in there as well, and that's for $2,000 for the Senior Awards Dinner and $575 for a high school graduation ceremony. So thank you to the PTSA. There's a donation from the Leonard Balducci Scholarship Fund in the amount of $200 from Norma Balducci. Thank you, Ms. Balducci, for that. And we have a donation of a soccer goal from Kate Hardy to the athletics department. So thank you, Ms. Hardy, for that. And of course, the $104,000 in grants from the IEF. So that's a big thank you. So we are done with our formal part of our agenda. We just have any additional comments from our community of anything that is of interest that is not on the agenda? Well, anything? No? All right. Oh, yes, yes, please come to the mic. Sure, please. Yes. 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 We approve.
The acceptance of the funds, yes.
Yes. Yes. But you're welcome to say something if you like. Thank you is, thank you works. All right, so we have our Board of Education discussion. Any remaining items that anybody wants to bring up at this point? No? Then that concludes our meeting. Our next board meeting is June 16th, next Tuesday at 7:30. And I should say that we're really starting at 6:30. Please come to our retiree tenure reception at 6:30 in the library. That's always a fun event. And we'll see you there. So right now I'd like a motion to move back into executive session, the purpose of discussing the employment history of particular persons.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.